live.
Hello. Okay, so finally,
After a couple tries.
yeah. Welcome everyone. Welcome to our podcast. I'm Susanna.
And I'm Elizabeth, and this is going to be Girls in the City.
Yeah, so shall we give a little bit of a introduction of what this is actually about?
Totally, I think it's a good place to start. Well, I think when you basically approached me about the project, it started out as the name pretty much alludes to it. But we both enjoy the show Sex and the City. I think that we can both agree on that.
Yeah.
But I think there's also like the understanding that like not a bit outdated, but it was filmed a while back, and so I think dating norms and like modern dating has changed since then. So I think your original idea was to basically chat about it, see if it applies to today's world. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly what the idea was. And also, just to add to that, I think the generational difference is also going to be prominent, especially with the Generation Z, which we are seeing a lot of content from on TikTok. It was basically some kind of inspiration for me to see to what extent what Carrie has been sharing with us through the whole series, and also how she was approaching these topics, to what extent this is still truth, and whether there's some additional viewpoints that we can provide. And also, I mean, we are both in our 20s, mid and late 20s,
Yep, that's right.
which I think has its own unique added value to the discussion. So I'm very, very excited to see where we will
Totally.
get at the end of this first episode.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. And just for full disclosure, a little bit about us. We're essentially two friends that love chatting about these kinds of things. We're by no means relationship experts, but I think most of
We
these
might be at
episodes
the
will
end of
come.
this.
We honestly might be. So, but take any dating advice with a grain of caution, just because, like, it's all from experience. But I think in terms of format, and Susie, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we're thinking of basically watching an episode of Sex and the City before we record our episodes. Basically, take down some notes, some of the questions that were asked and answered throughout the episodes, and then also kind of discuss of like whether these kinds of things would happen today, if these dating scenarios or these kinds of pondering questions would
Yeah.
also come up, and then we'll probably just go from there, right?
I mean, it's pretty much freestyle. Obviously, the initial content for every episode will be a specific episode of a Sex and the City, but at the end of the day, it's us chatting about that, which is, what do we do anyway? I just think that it's gonna be fun to also share this with the world, and we might learn some more things as we go.
Totally. I think that's the plan. Awesome. Do you want to intro us into the
Yeah.
first episode, and like what was the major question that it was looking to
Yeah.
answer?
So basically, the first episode, I mean, it's also like when I rewatched it again, I can see how the whole series evolved. Like the first episode is so different than if you're in season 4, 5.
Yeah.
But I like the lightness of the episode. And basically, we started, or Carrie started with the question, if women of New York are giving up on love and throttling up on power. And we have a very interesting, I would say, intro story of her friend Elizabeth, who meets this amazing guy while going for a gallery opening. And I would say, I mean, can we say that they fell in love madly? Even though they only knew each other for a very long time. And it looked like an amazing relationship. They started to look for a house together. Only then, on one day, the guy ghosted her.
Basically, yeah. Which like that's the interesting thing. I think I raised a question about that as well. I was like, looking at that episode and that circumstance is basically they met. They thought it was love at first sight. First of all, I don't know how people meet at gallery openings. I am someone that loves galleries. And I've never been to a gallery opening, but I'm wondering, like, is it that common, at least nowadays, to meet people at gallery openings and like have this love at first sight moment? Like, we get it, it's a show and like it's for the plot. I'm also curious about that, but essentially, yeah, they kind of met. He was basically love bombing her for 2 weeks, basically madly falling in love with her, explaining all these things, wanting her to meet his parents. Like, so she was super excited, and then all of a sudden he just drops off. Like, Susie, do you think that like happens today? Because I think it does.
I mean, I think there are two questions really. First of all, to what extent meeting at the gallery is even a thing? That's one
Yeah.
thing. Second thing is love bombing and the whole concept around that. I think
Yeah.
love bombing is probably even worse today than it used to be before. I don't know, or maybe that's just my
Totally.
perception. And I mean, this is going to be probably like ongoing reference point for me as we go through different episodes. But I think dating apps have changed the whole way we approach relationships so dramatically that now it's kind of like, I don't know, people look at relationships as something more of like fast approach, fast finish, that
Totally.
you go hard, you try and like you put everything in it, and then you kind of feel like, oh, after 2 weeks, if it's not everything you're looking for, you're done. Like it's kind of very fast and yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, like lightness is not really, or then it's like super light where you end up in a situationship, which is another air, like another coin of side of the coin of the same thing, right?
Right, right, right. No, but that's also like I think the episode really portrays like the intensity of like their quick relationship, but it's also like, do you have to get that intense right off the bat, or like should you take your time? Is like the other thing, right? Because I think like what caused the confusion, I think, for Elizabeth is that why would he do that, like if he didn't have any intention to continue the relationship, right? And so it had me like wondering. I was like, if that happened today to one of my friends, I think I've even heard some people be like, oh yeah, maybe like he already had a girlfriend, or maybe he's married, like all these things of like maybe that he just used those 2 weeks as an escape from his like day-to-day life, and like it wasn't like a genuine intentional relationship.
I mean, what do you think? It's hard to say. It's been
I mean,
very. There are a lot of possibilities why that happened, and I mean, I think there might
totally.
be also reasonable explanations to why he ghosted her. Not saying
Yeah.
that was the case, but obviously there's also an exception to a rule.
I mean,
But
definitely we can speculate on this, but I don't think they fully explain it. But also, like, does it have to be explained? Because I think even today, it's like you don't almost need to get the closure. You kind of just kind of make up your own understanding of what happened. Because obviously, if a person cared about you so deeply, they wouldn't do that, right? So
I
I think,
mean,
and I'm not sure it almost matters.
that's true. And also looking for a house together, that is a pretty serious, in my
Two
opinion.
weeks in, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
which is a red flag in itself.
Yeah,
Like, imagine you're meeting someone for 2 weeks. I mean, I don't remember if it was 2 weeks, but it was quite short. And you're all looking for a house. That would be a little bit too fast, in my
yeah,
understanding. Like, you don't know the person,
totally.
so that as a whole, like, how do you feel about that?
I don't know. Like, I think, like, I don't know if they actually were doing it even seriously. I know there are some couples that go to open houses, even though they're very early on in their like date, like relationship, whatever it is. But just to see what it is to like try on, like playing, like, you know, when you're a kid's like playing like a family, it's almost like that. So I'm not sure if like in the episode he actually intentionally was looking at a house to buy it with her. It might have been just like a fun, quirky date idea,
And I think that's
potentially.
a good point. I think what might have happened there is also that what he was thinking this was totally different to what she was thinking that was.
Right, right. And I mean, they haven't had time to talk about it because it's only been like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if they actually had that serious sit down conversation, except for like a number of great, like super excited dates. Um, so I'm sure like the adrenaline was definitely there. It was very fun, exciting, and new. But then you don't have a moment to be like, what is actually happening? Is this serious? Like you have to almost be a little skeptical.
Definitely. And also, it's this initial phase where you just feel all this amazing emotions and you're excited because this is the best person you've ever met, but you didn't really have
Totally.
time to understand who they are as a person. You just see the
Yeah.
positives or like whatever you think the person
Yeah.
is through your pink glasses. But anyway, I mean, like, it kind of goes back to the whole question, right? That Carrie
Mm-hmm.
is asking, like, should women just have sex as men and don't feel anything and just kind of, yeah, go for the pleasure, I guess, but not look for the romance or the long term intimacy expectations that you might have when you're looking for something serious.
Yeah. And I think it's a hard one to answer. It's interesting how the episode also then goes into basically almost, yeah, surveying people, but they're also through it introducing the main characters, which I kind of love.
Oh,
Because you
yeah.
can get the variety of perspectives and you can kind of figure out, like, yeah, who's like the hopeless romantic, who's like, oh no, like, I'm already strong and independent, like, there's no hope for romance kind of thing, right?
How do you feel about it? Like, there, I think like the introduction of characters is actually done in a really good way, and you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of get already who they are as individual persons.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think, yeah, you mentioned that originally, like when even the book was written for the show, is that the author kind of imagined it as like her own different persona. So I can also see that. Because it's like the conflicting ideas, right? That's like on one hand, everyone loves a fairy tale, everyone loves romance. But on the other hand, it's like, let's be realistic. Like the modern dating setup is not necessarily built for it.
Yeah, I mean, funny thing is that is is modern dating what they are referring to as modern dating? Is it still the modern dating that we are thinking about this?
Big
What are we
question.
doing
Yeah.
today?
Yeah, and I think that's where they basically talk about how there are so many great independent women and how come they're alone and there aren't like great single men to kind of meet their match. How do you, I mean, I personally think that still applies today, but maybe to a different degree. Would you agree?
Oh, I mean, I recently seen this research findings where they were saying that for first time, women they're doing better than men, like
Mm-hmm. In what
financially,
sense? Okay.
school wise, financially, in general, like in life, and they're kind of progressing. Versus men, a lot of men they kind of get stuck if they don't have the right role models, and that I think is changing the whole dynamics of what's the role of a woman in a relationship or in the world, and what is the role of men. And this idea of a strong independent woman, I think we are kind of getting more and more used to it. Like, it's not
Mm-hmm.
something new, it's almost as that's the new normal. And I mean, we're kind of, I think, going away, but just to link to that, we are now seeing like a new wave of women who are wanting to go back to being traditional, the whole concept of thread wives, and
Mm-hmm.
just being a woman as an opposite to I want to work and I can do it all alone. So I think that for women, yeah, this whole concept of doing it all is is becoming more and more prominent in what we mean or define as modern women. But for men, I think the whole concept of where we see them has changed since the Sex and the City was like filmed to today.
Totally.
Because, and I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts about this, because it's just me basically analyzing this from my perspective. But I think it's for everyone, it's harder to make it today, even though there are so
Yeah.
many more opportunities, but at the same time there's a lot of competition. And I do feel men are having a lot of pressures, especially when they're young, to make it. And those who make it then get all the benefits, also including women. But those who might not make it, they struggle to find a woman that would want to be with them, because we are looking for someone who is more or less on the same level as us, right? Economically, I don't know, mentally, we expect men to be at least at the same level as where we are.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that kind of also brings us to the question of like, would you say that men are put off by smart and independent women, or are they like, I know people have used the word threatened. I don't think they're necessarily threatened, but I think that there are some guys that like, if they were to meet a girl who's like has a great job, has like a high degree like education, makes her own living, like basically runs her own life, and to her it's like she doesn't need anything from anyone, and then
Yeah.
he will meet another girl that's like a little simpler, maybe comes from a different background, but then to her like she seeks a provider. Like would you say that like men would typically choose one or the other, or like would it depend?
I mean, I think the best person to answer this is probably men.
We should get a guest on here.
Yeah. My guess is, well, I actually spoke to a friend recently, and I asked him exactly the same question. I see him as someone who is super independent, really dominant as a personality, and his answer was actually very interesting, because I would expect that someone who has this strong kind of persona would be looking for maybe a little bit something a little bit more feminine. But he said that he only likes independent women, because if women are too dependent, he finds it off-putting.
So basically for him he wouldn't pursue someone like that. Interesting, because like I feel like in the sense it depends, and I could definitely see arguments coming from both sides that yeah, someone really wants to take on the role of the provider. But I think in modern relationships, there is that idea of compromise, right? It's like both people will be coming into a relationship with their own experiences, their own talents, their own skills. And then you kind of shape the roles in the relationship based on like the toolkit you have coming from both people, right? It's not that necessarily people have to take on the specific like gender roles of like, oh, okay, you are going to be mostly in the house, you're going to be mostly cooking, you're going to be mostly cleaning, versus like I'm going to bring home the bread. I think like there could be a combination of both, right? It's like I think in the modern world both people are going to be working. That's kind of expected. If you both have a decent income.
Is it expected or is it required?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, I think it's a huge cultural thing as well. I think in the Western world, it's going to be probably almost like expected. Yeah, I think that there are less women that are not like working a full-time job. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think I think for the series that was more like a sign of making it like, oh, I have my own job, I'm an independent person. But I feel today, with the way that the living costs are going higher and higher, it's almost impossible to
live on a single income.
Yeah. I mean, unless one of them is making a lot of money, I think you need to. I mean, especially if you live in cities like New York or London.
Yeah, any metropolitan area for sure.
Yeah. So I don't think it's a choice rather than a requirement these days.
Yeah. Okay, well that makes sense. They also brought up in the episode of like the mid-30s flip, and obviously, yeah, we're in our like 20s. We haven't gotten to that point, but actually, I have some like interesting takes on this. Just because like in the episode, for those who haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's interesting, but basically, it's just a bunch of guys explaining that like, if you're gonna be like dating a girl, you want to have kids at some point. Well, you don't want to date anyone in their 30s because, well, they want to have kids right away. So they basically alluded to that if you're a guy in your 30s, you're very likely to date a girl in their 30s instead of a girl in their 30s. How did you feel about that?
I go first. I think
first.
You have a really specific opinion about this. So
no, I just saw it play out. So like my experience is I was on a date with a guy who I think he was like 34. I want to say he was 34. Um and yeah, for transparency, I'm 26. So like he was slightly older. I was like, whatever, age is a number. I'm gonna go for it. We end up going on the date. We're sitting at a bar. Just like one of my favorite things to do at bars is also people watching. And so we're just kind of,
Yes.
it's so much fun, right? It's like, what else are you gonna do? Besides talk to the person you're with, but it's fun to like people watch. But obviously, once you're people watching, you're kind of assuming things about their lives. You're starting to judge a little, but like it's all fun and games. No like bad things intended. But anyways, but this guy that I'm with is sitting down with me. He's talking, and then he points at a group of women who I think were celebrating a birthday. I think, yeah, they were definitely, they looked like they were in their 30s.
Early
And
30s.
I actually don't know. I can't really tell.
Okay, okay.
My radar on that is not great, but they're definitely like, yeah, they were in their 30s. Like they looked very like put together. They're clearly going out. And basically, the guy that I'm with is telling me, he's like, yeah, just look at that group of women. And I was like, what about them? And he's like, you see, there's not much hope left for them. And I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, immediately to me, like I'm sitting at the stage, be like,
Oh.
red flags, red flags, red
Oh,
flags.
really?
and I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, I just wouldn't date one of them. And I was like, how come? Just
Wait,
like,
wait,
out of
wait.
curiosity at this point.
Just to like,
Yeah.
prefix this. Was this your first date with him?
This was our first date. Absolutely. I just met this man.
That is like a really strong, kind of showing of
He
who
has some
you
hot
are.
takes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And I was just curious about this at that point. Like, why would he think that?
Okay.
And he's like,
What
basically
did he
explain this
say?
to me. He's like, yeah, so like guys are pretty much like reaching their near peak in their 30s. They're like very independent. They have a good job. They're like able to like provide, and they want to date a woman that like they see themselves with. But like similar to what they were saying in the show, he's like, well, I don't want to have kids right away. So like I want to probably look for a girl in her like 20s who's basically just like living out her life, having fun. So she's not like seriously looking for someone to settle down with right now. And he's like, and if I date a woman who's in her 30s, she will literally be on like a schedule to have kids immediately because, well, she already like reached a great point in her life with her career. So she's kind of on that track. And I was like, well, wouldn't you want that as well? He's like, no, I kind of want to have fun for a few more years because even if I'm going to be a guy in my 40s, it's fine to be a dad at that point. And I was like, okay, that's a very
No, but
interesting take.
that's the point. That's the whole and the whole problem, because they have time, right? Like they can literally
Right.
start the family when they're 40. I mean, they build a career, they can, do the same thing and provide. For women, there is a very, very specific window of opportunity that until
Yeah.
when you can have kids. So I have heard this before, like basically where I talked to a friend recently, and I am someone who wants to have a family one day. Just for a reference, I'm 28.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a ticking bomb in a way, because I know that I want to do it with someone that I feel comfortable. And for that, you need well, you need some time to get to know the person,
Right.
right? And then,
At least.
yes, I mean, if you're not like, yeah, feeling that you have like no time at all,
Right.
but like you need some time to take to kind of just hang out with the person and see whether you fit and you are a match, and then you might have a family, and you don't know how you might be 35 suddenly, that is, in my opinion, an age where it starts to be something. If you want to have a family, you need to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas just, we were basically, going back to that discussion with a friend, we were talking about like where we will be in 10 years, and I was like, shit, in 10 years I hope to have a family, because I will be 38, and if I don't have a family until that point, probably I cannot anymore. Whereas he will
Yeah.
be, in his late 30s, and he will be totally fine if he is still single and just then starting to look for something more serious.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. It's just an interesting take. But like at that point, yeah, women it's hard to say they can have it all because yeah, career wise, independence wise, I think we're in a good place in history in order to be able to do that. But because of that like biological decision basically that was thrown upon us, we can't have it all. Whereas like I think men still have the chance to, right? At any point that they want it.
Yeah, and I mean, how do you feel about that? Like, do you feel
It's a little
this
sad.
pressure in a way?
Um
You are 2 years younger than me, so I think that
yeah.
also plays a role in a way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's not something that keeps me up at night, right? It's like ideally, yeah, I'd agree with you. Like, I'd also want to have a family, but I'm also like, I think both you and I, like, we're quite career oriented as well. Just, I think, due to our backgrounds, we met doing in grad school. So it's like we're clearly driven and motivated professionally, but at the same time, yeah, I do agree that like at some point I do want to have a family. Maybe I am putting it off a little bit too much, but I also like don't want to put that level of pressure of like, oh, I need to meet someone so I can start planning my life with them for the rest of my life, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think that still has to come like naturally. Honestly, you can't just meet a person and start interviewing them for the position to be
I
your like
mean,
life partner.
unfortunately, this is something that you need two people for.
Exactly, it has to come from both sides, but you also like you can't plan for it, right? Which is the super hard part, but I think that comes down to like just the fundamentals of dating. But I think yeah, the show definitely touches upon it.
But the thing is also, I think like more and more women are speaking about the fact that they are running late and they are starting to fear that maybe it will not happen for them. And now I'm talking about like women in their 30s where you see on social media where they're talking like, oh, I still want to have a family, or I was in a relationship for 6 years and suddenly it ended,
Right.
and now what do I do?
Yeah.
And I feel like this is something that has changed a lot since the 90s when the show was uh, shot. I
Yep.
think that there are more women that have this dilemma. Obviously, there are also a lot of women who don't want to have children for
Right.
different reasons. And I think that has been also natural development. Now it's a thing more common than maybe in the 90s. Obviously, I was a child, so I can't really say. But I feel like
Yeah.
this change has happened. And the last thing I wanted to say was I don't even know what. But
I'll come back to you.
uh, yeah, I think this 30 turning 30 trap, I do feel it
Mm-hmm.
personally that and there is, I mean, also statistical data for that as you age as a woman, it's gonna be more difficult to find a partner versus for a man it's rather the opposite.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And
Totally.
it's very unfair. I don't like it.
Yeah, 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 I agree. No, but I also think the show does like the characters that play in the show also portray women in their 30s having an absolutely fabulous life, right? It's like they have this incredible bond between the four of them. They have all
Yeah.
their friends as well. Their amazing careers, their amazing life in New York. I know again, it's very much romanticized in in a way, but they do seem to be like enjoying their lives even though there is obviously still that pressure and like the dating scene is chaotic.
And also I think like like kind of going back to this, I mean they are having the best time of I think their life. And again,
Right.
we don't know what it is to be 30, but I've heard a lot of people also that I talk to who are slightly older than me that 30s are just better than 20s because you are more established, you're more confident in yourself, you have more money. So
Yep.
I
I
do
heard it's like
feel
your 20s but with money.
exactly, and you can just afford more. um at the same time, thinking about, and we know how, their lives evolve throughout the episodes and series. Is my question is, do I want to have that life that they have when they are 40, in their 40s, Because
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what ultimately you need to ask yourself when you have this dilemma again, about, what is this actually that you want? Because I do feel like if you want to have family, you need to include that in your life at some point and
Right.
compromise on it. And I think that except Charlotte, who is very, I think it's kind of clear what she's looking for in terms of family.
Mm-hmm.
All the
Yep.
other women are either not really having an opinion whether they want to have children or not, or it happened by mistake, or in terms of, in the case of Samantha, it's clearly she doesn't want to have that kind of family life,
Right. And which is fine. Like I think
which
that's it's
is,
actually kind of cool that they have that in a single friend group, right? They're not all the
yeah.
same in that sense.
But I think like that kind of changes this whole approach to dating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what they're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. But also going back to the question of can women like have sex like men? And then yeah, Carrie goes on her experiment. And the thing that stood out to me, yeah, she came up to an old fling at a bar. I personally wouldn't do that. Would you?
So that we actually, it's like very very lightly touched on this, and I would say if I really just am there to enjoy my life, and I'm like, oh, there's this person I was obsessed for a very long time, as Carrie
Yeah.
very clearly explains in the series, that she was basically dating him or obsessing with him, and when she was 26 and then 29 and then 20, like 31. And
Yep.
then you see this person again and you kind of feel over them,
Yep.
and want to feel the same way that they felt when they were dating you, just kind of enjoying, having fun, but not really taking it seriously. I would totally do it.
Yeah. Getting the
Yeah,
upper hand back.
yeah, because I mean, why not? Like, you are single, you should enjoy your life, and if that's what ultimately gonna make you feel more confident,
Yeah.
why not?
That's fair. Yeah. Do you think she was in a way getting her revenge on him?
I think she was just kind of looking at the situation through his perspective and
Right.
trying to see that there's pleasure in that, just like getting what you want and not really thinking about the other person.
Totally. Interesting.
What do you
Interesting.
think?
I don't know. It's a fascinating idea. Would I do that? Probably not. Just because,
Why?
like, I don't know. Usually when I'm like over things, I'm not gonna be like, all right, let me go figure out like what it was like to feel like them. Because it also, I think it kind of turned on her because at the end they were at the Club Chaos and he came up to her. He's like, oh, you finally realized like the kind of relationship that I want, and she's just like, oh, he didn't get the point. Like it was a little disappointing, I think, to her.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't care, I think if you don't care, you just don't care. Even
Yeah.
whatever the other person's saying to you, like she was just like, yeah, okay, whatever, but like it's not gonna affect you.
Yep.
Other thing is if you do it for really the revenge, trying to prove the point to the other person, I think that ultimately means you're not over it, though. You know.
Right.
But
Right.
but
Right.
but like
Right.
it kind of goes to my, like, when you were saying this, like you never would do it. Have you ever heard about the concept of post breakup sex?
I've heard of it. I've not done it.
I think I've done it,
Okay.
but probably the time between the breakup and when I met with that person again was so long that I wouldn't necessarily
Yeah.
identify it as that. But I think
Interesting.
it might be coming to, this kind of concept of getting your self-confidence back eventually,
Right.
and
Totally.
maybe something that Carrie ultimately was looking for.
Yeah. At least in the moment, it seemed like
Yeah.
it. Yeah. But to flip that like persona on its head as well, because we also meet Skipper, who Miranda very gently calls Skippy, which I thought was funny. The concept of like a nice guy that's too nice to a point that he's like, I literally cannot like find a woman to date because I'm too nice. Do you think that still exists today?
So, I mean, there is this YouTube channel, right? Home Math.
Yep. You
which
showed me
explains
this.
this. Yeah, I don't even know why, but it basically explains different ways of how women categorize men. And there is definitely an area where men are just a friend zone because they're too nice but not too bad or like too attractive to that point for a woman to feel that they
Yeah.
want to pursue them beyond the friendship level. So I do agree that good guy trap exists.
Yeah.
Personally, how do you deal with that though?
Yeah.
As if that's your personality, like, is do you think that there are women who actually find it attractive regardless of this whole map analyzing?
I mean, I think to a degree, I mean, I'm still a firm believer that dating is just very experimental. You're trying to find a connection with someone, right? So there is still someone for everyone out there. So if you are too nice to one person, you're going to be a good fit for another.
Yeah.
Um, but I think like there is that degree, and I don't know if this is like a toxic thing or a not toxic thing, but like there is a degree that I think a lot of women do appreciate, that like not the danger side of things, not like a bad boy persona, but like someone who almost challenges them. And right, and Skipper in this sense is not like challenging Miranda in that way. I think she did make the remark of like he was being like accidentally not rude to her, but he was basically saying like she's not a model. um but that's what like
Yeah.
got her interested, right? So like when he accidentally made a rude joke, but he like absolutely did not intend to, right? Because
He
he's
was
too
just
nice.
clunky. He was just like not really knowing
he was
what to
just
say.
he was just
And
awkward, yeah, for
Miranda
sure.
is just such a dominant personality that she like immediately calls him out on his bullshit joke,
Yeah.
which I mean that this dynamics in itself might be also working. um I don't think I personally am that type of personality as Miranda, like that kind of independent, almost masculine energy in a way.
Right.
Maybe that is what she's actually looking for because, and I mean, I'm gonna spoil it a little bit, but she will later in this year's date a guy who is also rather um, less dominant in their everyday interaction. So
Yeah, which I think is perfectly fine because again,
yeah,
it's whatever is going to match your flavor, and that's cool. um
the whole topic though of nice guys, I think we might just be also overthinking it because what you said, and I would like to hear your kind of take on this. I do think we change also um, according to who we are with. You know what I mean? So I have
Interesting. Okay.
friends who individually are great people, but then when they were together in a relationship, it was just toxic because they were bringing
Mm-hmm.
uh, in each other the toxicity. So in that sense, their behavior with that person was bad, but when they were not together with this person, they were a great person. Like
Yeah.
this, like I wouldn't say that they are a toxic person. They were just toxic with that specific person when they were
The
in a romantic
combination.
relationship. Yeah, like the compatibility just wasn't
Yeah.
good.
It's like a chemical combination, you know? It's like when you're doing science experiments, like poof.
Yeah. So maybe the whole concept of good guy is just you become this good guy or golden retriever in in a interaction that is not.
She brought it up. The golden retriever and black cat theory.
There's a whole other conversation on this. But I do think a golden retriever is ultimately a good guy concept.
I agree. I totally agree. And I think this also comes with age because I think, like, when you're a teenager, right, you love, like, the bad boy idea. It's like the troublemaker in school, and you're like, wow, he's so cool. But then as you grow up and you go through relationships, you kind of realize that, like, it's not the roller coaster of like emotions that you're looking for. You are genuinely like, at least like this is my take. Like from my experience, like I would genuinely look for someone who brings like calmness and stability to my
Peace.
life, because like my
Yeah,
life is already crazy enough that like I just want to come home to like someone to relax with and unwind with and like have a hobby with, you know, or like chat to. And I don't need like a roller coaster at home.
definitely. I think you need to go through horrible relationships to get to that point, though. You know what
Right.
I mean? Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say the same thing 10 years ago. Now I
Right.
totally agree because I have
So mature
experience.
now.
Yeah, we can just give advice.
So
um,
wise.
if you go through very turbulent and I would give it a concept of Italian type of relationship, you realize how much energy that costs you, and that ultimately you want your partner to give you this peace, as you said, rather than
Yeah.
stress. But I want to bring back this point of what you said earlier, that the person needs to challenge you in some way. And I think that's
Right.
very very important, because yes, they should be this kind of support, or at least that's how I look at it, like this
Mm-hmm.
support. um yeah, someone that I can go to, and I also always know that they will, take me in and say, yeah, it's all good, don't worry, and kind of like regain my energy. At the same time, I think you need to keep challenging each other in order to grow. And that is something that, yeah, I realized only recently. I was usually looking for these type of people that were giving me peace, but they were not
Mm-hmm.
challenging me. And ultimately, what happened was that I got bored, because I needed that in a way.
Yeah.
And then I started to, yeah, lose interest in the relationship. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I love a person that challenges me, but they don't need to challenge me like emotionally, right? It could be like a fun discussion, like a debate of some sort. And I find that like interesting and challenging, especially if it's like somebody who is an expert in a field that's completely different to mine, which I find super fascinating. Because like one of the things that I actually find most attractive in people, and it's not even like a particular field that they're in, but if they're interested in something super niche that is like a passion of theirs, and the way that they talk about it, the way they explain like about it, I love those kinds of things, and like that challenges me mentally in a way that I'm
Mm.
like, oh, that's so attractive.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, again, challenge can mean different things. But
Right.
for me, it's more like they help me to also kind of set boundaries, like
Yeah.
this, like communicate with me that this is okay, this is not okay in terms of your behavior, and also challenge me in the way of, you, like, I know your potential, I can help you to, grow, because I think that way, even if you go through years of relationships and you do change, if you have this understanding at the beginning, you also go through the transformation easier, because you expect that people will change and you want them to help go through this process.
Yeah. Makes
So,
sense. Makes
yeah,
sense.
I mean, be a nice guy as long as you challenge me.
The recipe is so simple. um, and
Yeah, but
just
I
kind of
mean,
try to, yeah, go for it.
I want to like bring really quickly the one other thing you said, which is like, how common is it to run into someone on the street or like in a gallery? Like,
Yeah.
is that even a thing today?
Is that
Because
even real?
dating apps are the first and main source of how you meet someone these days.
Right. It obviously has become the norm. I personally find that fascinating because, like, we've also, like, I don't know about you, but I've gone through cycles of like, okay, get on the dating apps, meet some people. The dates have not really worked out. Let me go try to meet people in the real world. Oh, dating apps are still not working. Real world's not working. It's like there is a cycle of frustration, essentially.
Mm.
Though dating apps, I think, are kind of like the first default into it. I don't think it was always like this, right? Because I
It
think they
wasn't.
used to be, yeah, like before, I want to say COVID, right? Before COVID, a lot of my friends actually frowned upon like even having a dating app profile, right? And it was kind of like, I think at some point I was even a little embarrassed to tell my friends that I liked trying out a dating app. Um, but it has
Okay.
changed so dramatically,
When was
like
that?
since COVID. I want to say I got on my first dating app experience was in 2018. And before that, I've never been on any dating app, and I heard a podcast about Bumble, and I was just curious.
Okay.
Like, I was like, I can be the confident girl that asks a guy out. Bumble is perfect for me, and
How did that
it,
go?
I mean, it was fun. I still like. I love the idea of Bumble. I love the messaging behind it, like as a concept. But oh, I have so many hot takes on dating apps, but like just from the perspective of like data and information gathering and things like that, like Hinge has been done a better job personally. That's what I my experience. And I've always like bounced between Bumble and Hinge personally. But what about you?
So, I mean, jumping away slightly, of like how
Yeah.
likely it is to meet someone on the street. Um, I think for me, so looking back now, I know most of my adult, late teenage adult life, I was actually in a relationship, and
Mm-hmm.
I always met this person, uh, like not through the app. So it was either
Mm-hmm.
at school, friends, or yeah, pretty much that. Um,
Right.
I was for like a short period of time during my bachelor's. I was single and I downloaded Tinder, and it was fun until it wasn't. I felt really overwhelmed and it was kind of boring for me. So then I uh, basically stopped using it, and then I met someone and got off of it. And now I have been single again for a year. So I was like, okay, like this is actually the first time I'm gonna seriously try this apps. I have never tried Bumble because full honesty, I do want the man to text first.
Ooh, okay, okay. Oh, this is we can actually touch back on this because we have Samantha in the show that's trying to pursue Big, but then he
Oh
actually
yeah,
ends up
yeah,
pursuing
yeah.
Carrie instead. So that like in the show as an example, I think is a really good example of that. But please continue.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think this is like a really good connection because I think there are two different types of women. I'm definitely Carrie in a way that I don't want to be doing the first move. I also think that when I am too proactive, it usually doesn't end up well because the man needs to be really into it and making
Yeah,
the first move, which means that there is actually an interest. So I rather would react than be proactive.
yeah. He's got to be the golden
And
retriever.
yeah, pretty much. So yeah, Bumble not interesting to me as a concept as a result of that. And yeah, so far I think I ended up in the same kind of conclusion now, using the dating. So, no, wait, what is it? Hinge, yeah.
Hinge, yeah.
Humble. I was like, Humble, that's not the name.
We should do
Uh,
it. We should launch another app. A combination of the two would be called Humble.
be humble. I have Kendrick's Lamar on like a
Yeah,
face
yeah,
of it.
yeah. Great marketing.
So I kind of came to the same conclusion that at first it's overwhelming and second it's kind of boring because you just chat and like you have a lot of options at some point and you just like there is not like the human element disappears. It's just numbers and images,
Yeah,
but you don't know who these people really are. I
yeah,
think it's a natural way for me to like someone, to see them first and then get to know them. I usually
Totally.
need to get to know them first and then kind of start to see them in a different light. So that's my take really on that. So I would go into a carry group in terms of proactive versus reactive. But I think you might be different in this, and you're not the only one.
I mean, I don't get me wrong. I love a guy who wants to pursue me. I've actually even on Bumble, like even though I start the conversation first, that literally just opens up the door for them to pursue me, right? Because after that, I've even dated a guy for like a year that I met on Bumble, and like I think, yeah, the moment that I started the conversation, he then took over. He then started to pursue me. So I think it really depends. I think it's just like
Okay.
it's just a technical solution, you know. The dating norms are still dating norms, but I'm also like I think it depends on the kind of guys that you go for. I think the same thing in a bar is like if you're like I don't know at a coffee shop, bar, whatever social setting off the dating apps, you'd actually like get pursued more by like the confident guys, but they not might not necessarily be your type long term. Because like I've
Mm.
always like really, and maybe that's just my type, but I've always like liked the shy, like really nerdy guys, and they're not going to be the type of guy that's going to come up to me and talk to me first, you
But
know.
are you sure? Because from my experience,
Oh,
it's not true. I
interesting. So you think that
yeah.
eventually there's to gather the courage?
I mean, I don't. I have zero clue. Again, I cannot speak for men, but I do
Mm-hmm.
get the point of what you're saying. Like a slightly maybe geeky, intellectual guys.
Yeah, someone's a little more
I
introverted, you know.
Yeah, but I got approached by these type of people.
Wow, tell me your secrets.
I don't know why though. I do think it takes them. Like the truth is, it takes them longer.
Yeah.
I was in a with one guy. We were hanging out as friends for a year before he actually asked me.
Oh wow. Okay, this is why like yeah, school, friend groups, I guess maybe work are places to meet people because like if you're just in like a one day setting and you find someone like attractive in like a social setting, you're not going to have that reoccurring meeting to see them
That's
over and
true,
over again.
and that's the whole thing. Yeah, that's why I feel like dating apps are just this, and like unfortunately that's how we do it these days. But it's just kind of a natural way to meet, because you are
Yeah.
going with a very specific goal in mind, being like, I chose this person on the dating app, so I'm gonna see whether we click and we can potentially date. And the other way around is like, oh, I like to hang out with with this person, and in some scenarios you actually realize as you go through that, oh, I might like them more than just a friend.
Yeah.
and
No, that's
and
fair.
and I think that it's also when you bump randomly to someone, like you just kind of feel the energy that you cannot get through a screen, and you just kind of go and explore. And I love
Mhm.
that. I would love to bump into people on the street and meet them that way.
Yeah, just like carrying big.
Yeah. I mean, the situation on how she met him was very specific.
No, but I also think like it's kind of cool that like yeah, in a moment where you're least expected to meet someone that's going to have like an impact on your life, that's how
It
it
happens.
happens.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, of course. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of close this, I think at the end of the day, it's all about you. I have a friend who actually she hates to be approached. Like she finds that
Oh,
super unattractive, and she always needs to be the one who hunts, you know, because
interesting.
that's the only way she likes it. I'm the
Yeah.
total opposite. I need the guy to be dominant and like not dominant but like confident enough that he actually
Be
can
masculine.
approach,
Yeah.
exactly, because that's what I'm looking for, that's what I like. And I think,
Right.
you know, that's also why I don't mind that other people don't approach me, because I use it as a benchmark. If you are so afraid that you cannot even talk to me, probably we will not get along anyway,
Fair.
you know. So
Fair.
you, if you understand yourself, you probably also can kind of see to what extent the approach will work or not work.
Yeah. So you use it as a filter. Interesting.
Basically, yeah.
Love it.
But anyway, shall we kind of go to
The conclusion.
yeah, like what was actually the conclusion of the episode?
Yeah, I mean, the way I understood it is that, yeah, Carrie is out trying to figure out, can women have sex like men? And no spoilers, but spoilers, in the last moment of the episode, basically she can't find a ride home, and then Big appears out of nowhere, like the knight in shining armor he is, and basically offers her a ride, and then they have this discussion, and his conclusion is that like she's silly to go on this discovery in the first place, because the only people asking themselves that question is like people who've not been in love, which he just assumes based on her research, I guess. Would
And
you agree?
experience so far.
Yeah.
You mean if I agree with Mr. Big?
Yeah, I mean, like, is that like a fair conclusion to make? Of like, he just made that assumption, being like, "Oh, you're doing all this silly stuff just because like you've not been seriously in love."
So, I don't want to say 100% yes or no, because I do think maybe if you ask me this in 2 years, I will tell you something else. So I don't like to give absolutistic answers, but where I am at the moment, I do agree with him, actually.
Okay.
I think once you really experience this real love, that you really fall in love with someone, and you realize that what you want to give up, or like what you want to do for this person in a relationship, is completely different than all your previous relationships. That's at least what my experience was. Um, and you experience this real deep love, and then it ends and you're back to dating market. It almost feels like it's not anything else but that is less fulfilling, and in long term will not make me as happy as the real love
Yeah.
did. What do you think?
Totally makes sense. No, I kind of definitely agree with that, right? It's like I'm kind of on big side of this. I've never been like a very casual person in general. I admire people that do that. That's cool. But it's just not me. I don't know. I can't do it. So in that sense, I love the idea of like, yeah, women being strong and independent and like doing things that men do great, because like why should it be different? I admire that. I'm just like not that kind of person. I think Big is also like, he's like, well, I don't think it's a gender thing. I think it's more of like you as a person, because I think he basically agreed that like, okay, but you're saying having sex like men have sex differently, like some of them like it when they're in love, some of them don't, like it's not a gender thing, which I think I actually agree with that point the most.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think, looking at Carrie's character so far, like how it's portrayed in this first episode, I don't think she was in love until that point.
Yeah. Oh, is that when you think she fell in love with him?
Huh. We should ask our Reddit friends. I would say...
I think...
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, go for it. Oh, okay. I mean, I would actually think that's when her interest was peaked, right? Because, like, she met him on the street. Then Samantha describes him as, like, the next Donald Trump kind of guy. Yeah. Like, he's a big deal. And at that point, I think she's like, so what? Okay, he's cute, successful, whatever. But it's not until then that they have this deep conversation. And she's like, oh, my God, he's capable of love.
Yeah, like this Prince Perfect just became vulnerable with me.
Yeah, and I think we women find that so attractive. I agree.
Oh, I mean, like, I think we are not that hard at the end of the day.
It's not that hard. As we said before, the recipe is simple.
Yeah. Okay, so you actually do agree with Mr. Big?
I'd say so. At least, yeah, for me.
Huh, okay. Yeah, no.
Well, I mean, it's not that they haven't been in love. You can still, like, again, you don't need love. Again, everyone has a different approach to it. And I think that's what he's trying to say, right? As well.
Yeah, yeah. I do think, and I also think it's coming from probably, no, well, he's older than her. And
Right.
we learn later on that he was in serious relationships.
Yep.
So I do understand where he's coming from. I also feel that this kind of jumping back and forth, like that, as you said, it's not gender specific. It applies to both men and women. From my own experience, those people who do this kind of stuff, where they are rather
Mm-hmm.
casual and do not commit, um, they were rather young,
Right.
so early 20s, and they haven't really been in a relationship that they would say, oh yeah, this is a person I want to marry.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree on that one.
Whether that is like a
Um,
thing of maturity or thing of just meeting the right person, I don't know.
yeah, I also think it's at the end of the day what you're looking for, because there are some people out there who are just like, I don't see myself like being in a long term relationship, where some people are like, I like the relationship, I don't want to do marriage, and like there's so many different combinations of things that like I think it really depends on that too.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you go for whatever you feel works the
You
best
do
for you.
you.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally.
Okay, so conclusion.
I think we have it. I think we
Mr.
have it.
Big is right,
I guess. I would say so. Uh,
which is surprising,
yeah,
as his
a little
character
bit.
is very specific.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Is there anything else that we didn't cover in this episode that you think? I think we got it pretty
I mean,
right on.
it's been an hour now.
It's been an hour. I think like, the last point that I wanted to make is like it's also interesting to see like the juxtaposition between like Carrie's understanding of the column and like modern dating in general, and like that's her thing, and then like Big comes out with like I think almost like old school romance. And it's interesting to see those things like almost conflicting in a way. But I think
Like
that
different
all,
worlds.
different worlds, yeah, and that comes in and out of the show I think as well, so I'm sure we can explore that in the future.
Yeah, I do like just kind of give a little bit of um, sparkle to this, and maybe something for future discussions. Is I do think
Yeah.
it's a question of a class as well.
Ooh.
I my perception is that Mr. Big is coming from a class that is rather upper, versus
Yeah.
Carrie is more the middle, or like upper middle, and
Yeah.
these differences and the approach to life and how traditional versus not you are is, in my opinion, kind of strongly connected to this class and the way you were raised.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
something to explore next day, something to explore next time.
For sure, for sure. All right, I think, yeah, I guess we can wrap it up here. But
Yeah.
as we noted, we'll pick up again with the next episode, ask another question, try to answer it in a way we understood it. But yeah, I think it was really fun.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on our first official pilot episode
Woo.
of Girls and the City.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
And we'll see you soon. Bye.